This bow tie is really handy. Is my hair okay? Good. Hello and welcome back. My name is Matthew Quilliam and you're joining me on the next episode of Safety First, the series aimed at ukulele players and how you can keep playing in a healthy and safe way. In this series we cover things such as playing without pain and also preventing injury to yourself and to the instruments. In this video we're going to be talking about instrument storage. Now, normally this video would be going out to my supporters on Patreon, which you can find more about in the link in the description. However, this video I felt deserved to be seen by a wider mass audience, and so my patrons will be getting an exclusive blooper reel this month instead. So without further ado, let's begin on instrument storage within the home. Now, there are two ways you can store your instrument in the home. The first is to leave it out. Now, there are advantages as to why you might do this. If you leave it out, then you're more likely to pick it up and play it, but you may also easily trip over it and it will get dirty with dust eventually. When choosing an appropriate stand, don't choose a stand that is designed for guitars, because then this will happen. So obviously we don't want that to happen. So we need a ukulele stand instead. And that's where these are very useful. These are Aroma uke stands. They're very light, this weighs absolutely nothing, and they unfold, so they're very portable as well. You can keep these in the home and they're totally flexible and they'll support any size ukulele from soprano up to baritone. These are great, I've got loads of these. A couple of disadvantages though, because they're so light, they're not very robust and they're very easy to trip over. So be careful of that. They also don't have much support on the uke. That lip at the front there is the only support they have to stop the instrument from tipping forward. So if you're going to be in a space where there's lots of people walking around, and that includes out on gigs as well, people walking around, make sure that the instrument is nice and secure in these stands, because they will fall over. I've had that happen to me on a number of occasions. If you want something a bit more robust, then a stand like this will do the job just fine. Now this is again technically a guitar stand, but it is completely adjustable. This section here you can raise the height of to lower it down for ukulele size, and it's got a much sturdier base as well. This bit at the top here locks closed, so that will prevent the instrument from falling over, and this is generally just great quality. This cost me about £15 to £20 from Kinsman, and the Aroma stand was only about £8. So obviously consider your budget, but obviously also consider how much you value your instrument, and it's worth paying just a little bit more for a stand that will protect your instrument. One of my favourite ukuleles once fell over from an Aroma stand and now has a really annoying dent at the top, so just be wary of that. Likewise, when you're at a gig as well, these are really great. The other ones aren't so portable, of course, so these are good. But if you're going to leave your uke out on a stand, make sure it's not unattended. I've had gigs where I've left it unattended and people have walked off with my instrument or spilled orange juice over it. So you really do have to be careful. We're going to talk more, though, about going to gigs in just a second. But first, the other way you can store your instrument at home is by leaving it in its case. Now, when it's in its case, obviously it's going to be nice and protected from any dirt or dust and any passer-by as well who may trip over it or maybe make something fall onto it. You've got to store the case in a safe place though, and cases, unless you pay a lot of money, aren't the most robust things, especially if it's only a little gig bag. So you've got to store the case in a really nice place, maybe on a shelf somewhere or against a wall in a discreet corner, like how I store my cased instruments. Don't do what I used to do, which was I used to keep my ukuleles under the train set, and it was right up against a wall, so you had to climb under the set, pull the case out, undo all the clasps and everything. I just didn't practice, and therefore I wasn't as good a player as I could be. So I do leave some of my ukes out, but I leave others in a case, nice against a wall in a discreet corner. So that's how we store our instruments in the home. But let's say you were going to a gig. Well, you've obviously got to get your instruments to the gig venue. And just as important as storing instruments in the home, storing instruments on the way to a gig is equally important. Obviously there's no people who might trip over it, But with the car going at great speeds, going round bends, there's great potential for the equipment to slide about. So when you're packing your car, you've got to be very careful in the way that you do it. Try and prevent objects from sliding around. If you've got any little nooks and crannies that you need to fill, try putting some smaller things in those gaps. If you have any bags that need to go, especially ones with a big strap like this, try and put them around another object so that they're grounded and they've got a little earthen anchor point to make sure it doesn't slide around. What I would finally say though is, even if you've taken the greatest consideration to make sure that stuff doesn't slide about, you may find that something does inevitably move, and as you're driving along you'll hear it and go and you may panic, and you may decide that you want to pull over and put it back to where it was. Well, what I would say to that is actually, unless the problem is glaringly dangerous, now it's moved, leave it there, because it will have fallen into a place where it can no longer move. It will have fallen down and it won't be able to go back up again. So you should probably keep going in that scenario, because otherwise you're just going to pull over, stop, put it back, and then it's just going to happen again, and it's going to keep rocking back and forth, which is actually more dangerous than if you just left it where it was. If you're going to be taking the seats down, then do be careful. Stuff could fly forwards and hit you, especially maybe even in the back of the neck if it's long and sharp and pointy. So try and use the seat belts if possible. Okay, I think I've covered all the main points so far. Let's go to that gig. God, I dread to think what the neighbours think of me in this outfit. Obviously, once you're in the car, it's very important to drive safely. By no means wear a very confusing and distracting hat, especially not one that you've put on backwards and didn't notice until recording just now. Secondly, always make sure you give your fluffy dice a little jingle. That is imperative for safe driving. And on a more serious note, always wear a seatbelt and keep your eyes on the road. Don't let the object that you got in the back of your car obstruct your view of the rear window. Obviously, being able to see out the back is very important, so whatever you do, don't let the stuff pile up so high that you can't see. So, let's head off to the gig. Oh, who's this? I think someone on YouTube's going to give a review of this CD pretty soon. I wonder who that could be. See, when you're driving, you've got to be very careful about speed bumps and little things like this. Because obviously the last thing you want is your instruments to get all bashed about. This is one of the things you've got to consider when packing your car, because you've got to make sure that things are going to be wedged in nicely, that they're not going to be upset too much by all the bouncing around. I mean, we are in Britain, of course, so all the roads here are terrible. So just make sure when you're driving along, if your instruments are nice and packed, of course if they aren't, but even if they are, then make sure you're driving very carefully as to not upset the balance and have something drop and break potentially. Well, we're here in Cocking, and we're now, of course, it's time to do the gig. Well, I mean, it's 2021, so no gigs yet. It's only March. But say we were to do a gig, you've got to obviously unpack the instruments in a systematic way, making sure that you basically do everything in the opposite way to how you put it in the vehicle. Now, when you're at a gig, you will be very tired and very enthused by the event, and you'll probably be in a very different mindset to how you were before the gig. You won't be as nervous, you'll hopefully be feeling very confident. So it's very tempting to just bung the instruments back in the vehicle afterwards. Well, you mustn't do that, because that defeats the whole purpose of this video. Please be patient at the end of videos, and even when you feel like you don't need to worry about the health and safety, just put the instruments in safely and securely. So you may be wondering why I've come to Cocking. I mean, I just needed somewhere to go to show what it's like going to a gig and how to transport your instruments when doing so. But the reason I've come to Cocking is really to summate the message of this video. Don't cock about. If you are going to be at all serious about gigging, then treat your instruments with respect. Treat them with the care that they deserve. Thank you very much. I've been Matthew Quilliam. Take care. Bye.